Shaquille O'Neal was sitting in his studio, getting ready to record another episode of his podcast. He had no idea what was about to happen would bring him to tears. You know Shaq? Big personality, bigger laughs, always the entertainer. But this day felt different. His guest, Stephen Curry, unexpected, yes, unheard of, definitely. Two legends from completely different eras. Shaq dominated the 90s and early 2000s with brute strength and unstoppable presence. Curry changed the game with finesse, shooting range, and heart. They never really played against each other at their peaks. But now, years later, Curry called in, and what he said stunned everyone listening. The conversation started light. Shaq cracked a joke about Curry's size. Curry fired back with a smooth response about how he made NBA giants irrelevant. The crowd laughed. Then, out of nowhere, Curry got serious. "I just want to say something real quick," he said. That one sentence shifted the whole tone. Curry went on to thank Shaq for paving the way, not just for big men but for anyone who wanted to be great. He talked about watching Shaq as a kid, trying to copy his dunks in his driveway, failing miserably but dreaming anyway. He told Shaq that every time he stepped on the court he did it knowing legends like him made it possible. And then he said it, "You're one of the reasons I believed I could make it." Shaq tried to laugh it off. He cracked a joke saying, "Man, you trying to make me cry on live radio," but his voice cracked. You could hear it. Everyone noticed. Shaq, the larger-than-life center who once dunked so hard the rim fell, was holding back tears. He took a deep breath. Then he looked into the mic and said, "Steph, man, that means a lot." You could hear the emotion in his voice. Real, raw, no filter. He thanked Curry too. Said he watched him grow from a skinny rookie nobody believed in to one of the greatest shooters ever. He said, "You didn't just change the game. You proved that heart beats height." Then he added something that hit even harder. "And to hear you say I helped. Man, that's everything." That moment wasn't just a highlight from a podcast. It was history. Two icons, one conversation, a passing of the torch, and maybe, just maybe, the most emotional moment in sports media this year. After the conversation moved on, Shaq kept going back to what Curry said. He replayed it in his head like a highlight reel, not of dunks or titles but of respect. Real, earned respect. He looked at the camera and smiled, still shaken by the moment. "Man," he said, "I didn't expect that today." Shaq's career was full of big moments, rings, MVPs, dunks that shook arenas, but this was different. This wasn't about stats or trophies. It was about legacy, about knowing that even when you're gone from the court, your impact lives on. Curry wasn't just saying thanks, he was saying you mattered. The podcast studio got quiet for a second. Just the hum of equipment and the sound of Shaq taking it all in. Then he laughed, trying to lighten the mood. "Man, I'm glad I didn't wear my good shirt today," he joked. "Would have ruined it with tears." The crew chuckled, but deep down, everyone knew they had just witnessed something special. Curry stayed on the line a little longer than planned. They talked about fatherhood, life after basketball, and how hard it is to stay relevant when the game moves so fast. Shaq nodded along, smiling like a proud older brother. He saw himself in Curry's hustle, in his love for the game, and maybe, in a way, he saw his own legacy looking back at him. By the end of the call, the energy in the room had changed. What started as another episode turned into something more. A moment, a story people would share. Clips from that conversation spread across social media within minutes. Fans watched it over and over. Some laughed, some smiled, others, like former players and analysts, just sat back and said, "That was real." People don't often see this side of Shaq. The emotional one, the reflective one. He's known for jokes, for trash talk, for being larger than life. But here he was, quiet, thoughtful, touched. That message from Curry hit deeper than anyone expected. It reminded Shaq why he did it all. Not just for rings but for the next generation. Later that night, Shaq posted on social media, just a short message. "Appreciate you, Steph. Didn't think I'd get emotional today. Guess life has a way of surprising you." The post blew up, thousands of comments. thousands of likes. People agreed. This was more than a podcast moment. It was a reminder of how powerful sports can be, how it connects us across time, across generations. Back in the studio, after the show ended, Shaq sat alone for a bit. He stared at the headphones on the table, thought about everything, his early days in the league, the battles, the wins, the losses, and now this being told by one of the greatest ever that he helped shape the future. He smiled, took off the headphones, and quietly said, "Man, that meant a lot." Hours later, Curry was asked about the call during a press conference. He smiled and said, "Yeah, I called Shaq. Just wanted to say thank you. He doesn't hear that enough." Reporters asked why now. Curry shrugged and said, "Sometimes you just gotta remind people how much they matter." That message hit home for a lot of people, not just athletes, regular folks too, because we all want to know that what we do matters, that someone out there sees our work, our effort, our heart. And in that moment, Stephen Curry reminded Shaquille O'Neal and all of us that greatness isn't just about stats, it's about the lives you touch. The next day, the clip was everywhere, on sports shows, in group chats, trending on Twitter. People were watching it over and over again, not because of drama or scandal, but because it felt real. Two legends, one heartfelt message, a moment that reminded everyone why they love sports. Fans started sharing their own stories online. Some said they cried watching the clip. Others said it made them call an old coach, a former teammate, or even a parent, just to say thank you. That's what this moment became, bigger than basketball. It was about gratitude, about respect, about knowing that your work left a mark. Even other players got pulled into the conversation. Dwayne Wade posted on Instagram, "Y'all better leave Shaq alone after this." Chris Paul replied with a crying emoji. Kevin Durant commented, "That's the GOAT move right there from Steph." The league was speaking, and they all agreed. This was special. Back at home, Shaq watched the reactions come in. He didn't expect any of this. He thought it was just another podcast, another fun interview. But now he realized how much his career meant. Not just to fans, but to the people who came after him. And that hit differently. He called up some of his old teammates, just to talk, to laugh, to reminisce. He even texted Kobe's family, just to check in. Something about that moment with Curry opened a door, made him think more about life, about legacy, about the people who helped him along the way. Curry, on the other hand, went back to practice like nothing happened. He kept it low-key, but those close to him knew this wasn't random. He had been thinking about calling Shaq for weeks. He wanted to do something real, something meaningful, and he did. Reporters asked if he planned to do more calls like that. Curry smiled and said, "Maybe sometimes you just gotta let people know you see them." That response hit hard, because deep down, we all want to be seen, especially by the people we looked up to. Shaq later admitted in another interview that he replayed the call a few times himself, not because he needed the ego boost, but because it reminded him of who he used to be, and who he still is, a giant, not just in size, but in impact. Some fans even dug up old footage of Shaq from the 90s, his highlights, his interviews, his funny moments. They compared them to today's players, and guess what? A lot of young athletes grew up watching him, trying to dunk like him, trying to be as dominant as he was. Curry wasn't the only one. What made this moment so powerful wasn't just the words, it was the timing. Shaq has spent years making people laugh, entertaining millions, being the voice of reason on TV. But every once in a while, it's nice to hear someone remind you that you mattered, that your work made a difference. And that's exactly what Curry did, without warning, without cameras, just a phone call, just a message, just two legends connecting across time. And in doing so, they gave the world something rare, a moment of pure, unfiltered respect. As the days passed, the message kept making rounds online. People who didn't even follow basketball were watching it, talking about it. Some said it was the nicest thing they'd seen from an athlete in a long time. Others said it reminded them of how important it is to show appreciation, especially to those who came before us. It wasn't just about Shaq or Curry anymore. It became something bigger, a reminder that even at the top of the game, the most powerful thing you can do is make someone feel seen, not for their fame, not for their money, but for what they gave to the sport, to the people watching, to the next generation. Shaq started getting messages from young players. Some were in college, some were still in high school. They all said the same thing: "I watched you growing up. I tried to play like you." And every time he read one of those, he smiled, because he knew now, it wasn't just about scoring points or winning titles. It was about inspiration. Even parents got involved. Some sent videos of their kids trying to dunk after watching old Shaq clips. Others posted stories of how they played basketball with their dads because of him. That's the kind of legacy Curry was talking about, the kind that lives on long after the final buzzer. And then came the moment no one expected. During a live game, the big screen showed Curry warming up. As he dribbled near the sideline, he looked up and pointed to the camera. Then he mouthed one word: "Shaq." The crowd went wild. Fans immediately knew what he meant. It was his way of saying, "That moment still matters." Back in the studio, Shaq saw the clip. He laughed, but again, you could tell it hit deep. He replayed the moment Curry called him, then the moment Curry shouted him out during the game. He shook his head and said, "Man, this is crazy." Not in a bad way, in a wow, life has come full circle kind of way. He even made a joke later that day: "If Steph keeps doing this, I might have to call him back and say thank you again." But underneath the humor, there was real emotion, real gratitude, because when someone lifts you up like that, especially when you don't expect it, it changes something inside you. People started asking if there would be a part 2. Would Curry come back on the podcast? Would Shaq return the favor and call Curry live? Neither man answered directly, but fans hoped, because after that call, everyone wanted more moments like that, more honesty, more heart. Some said the whole thing was the highlight of the year, not just in sports but in media, because it felt real. No scripts, no hype, just two legends having a conversation that reminded the world why we love this game so much, why we watch, why we play, why we dream. And maybe that's the real takeaway here, that sometimes the most powerful moments in sports aren't about wins or losses. They're about respect, about passing the torch, about telling someone, "You mattered," and letting them know it while they can still hear it. Weeks passed, but the story didn't fade. Clips kept popping up, on sports shows, in fan videos, even in college locker rooms. Coaches played it before big games to remind players that greatness isn't just about talent, it's about how you carry yourself, about how you treat others, about how you inspire. Shaq and Curry didn't make a big deal out of it. They didn't schedule another call, didn't do interviews about it. But every time they saw each other, whether on TV or at an event, there was that look, that quiet understanding, a nod, a smile, a moment only they truly understood, but one the world got to witness. Some fans started calling it the passing of the torch moment, not because Shaq gave anything to Curry, but because Curry showed that he never forgot where he came from, that he respected those who made the game what it is today, and that respect, it meant more than any trophy. For Shaq, it wasn't just about hearing nice words. It was about feeling valued, feeling like his work still mattered, like even after all these years, people were still watching, still learning, still dreaming, because of what he did on the court. He even started showing up at youth basketball events with a new message: "Play hard," he'd say, "dream bigger, and don't forget who helped you get here." He wasn't just talking to kids, he was talking to everyone, to coaches, to parents, to future legends. Curry, for his part, kept doing what he always did, playing with heart, leading by example, and staying humble. But now, when he looked into the stands during games, he sometimes saw young players wearing both Shaq and Curry jerseys, one past, one present. Together, that image became powerful. two generations, one love for the game, one shared history, and a moment that reminded everyone that sports aren't just about competition, they're about connection, about passing down something greater than stats or rings. Back in the studio, Shaq replayed the podcast clip again, this time not for himself, but for his kids. He wanted them to hear it, wanted them to understand that being great doesn't mean much if no one remembers why you mattered. And this message from Curry, it proved that Shaq's legacy was alive and well. One of his sons asked him, "Dad, did you really cry?" Shaq laughed. "Man, I held it together better than most would've," he said. Then he added, "But yeah, it hit me." His son nodded. Then he said, "I want to be like you someday." That hit harder than any dunk ever could. As the months rolled on, life went back to normal. Shaq kept hosting his show. Curry kept hitting threes. The world moved forward, but that moment, the call, the message, the emotion, never really left. It stayed with everyone who heard it, because moments like that don't just pass, they echo. Years from now, when people talk about the greatest athletes, they'll mention Shaq's dominance, they'll talk about Curry's shooting, but maybe, just maybe, they'll also remember the day one legend picked up the phone and reminded another that his impact lasted longer than anyone expected. And maybe that's the real power of sports, not the money, not the fame, not even the championships. It's the way one person can shape another's journey, without knowing it, without trying, just by being themselves. So next time you watch a game, listen close, look beyond the score, because behind every player on that court is someone who came before, someone who inspired, someone who opened the door, and somewhere out there, there's a kid in a driveway, dreaming, because of what someone else once did. And that is the real story behind Shaquille O'Neal, crying after an unexpected message from Stephen Curry. Not just a moment between two legends, but a reminder that the greatest thing we can leave behind is inspiration.